So here's a quick and simple recipe for you to bake bread at camp, whether you're in a bug out situation or on holiday. And there are a lot of things from the environment that you can use to substitute for the ingredients that we usually use to bake bread. For example, bulrush, is also known as common cattails, can be harvested for their pollen, which can be dried and used as a flour substitute. I'm going to bake a beer bread here, but you can substitute whatever you like or prefer. I'm Clarice, welcome to the Live Ready channel. So you basically need three sort of ingredients. The first one is a base or a medium. So that would usually be some kind of flour or anything that you've managed to pound to a fine grain. You also need a raising agent. In some instances that may be something like baking powder. Today I'm going to use beer. You can use yeast or anything that has partly fermented, or you could use something like eggs, which is also a raising agent. What was the third one?
Water.
Oh yes, it has a bit of moisture in it, so it can either be milk or water, or again, in this instance, the beer is going to be a bonding agent as well as a raising agent. And then the rest of the stuff that's in there is basically just for taste. So a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, or whatever your preference is. Maybe you've got some herbs that you'd like to put into your bread. In this packet, I have got 2 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. Really simple. So it's my medium, my raising agent, and then just 2 ingredients that are for taste. The reason I add sugar is because it balances the salty, savory, sweet kind of thing in the bread, and I think that it's quite nice with the beer. Right, so the beer is a Castle Light that I'm going to use, and if you have got a front runner roof rack, you can also use the roof rack to open your beer for you. So Frontrunner happens to make these really cool bottle openers that you can attach to the back of your roof rack, or to any part of your roof rack for that matter. So if you have one of those handy, it's really easy to just open whatever bottle you've got on hand through your Frontrunner roof rack bottle opener. Yeah, if you forage berries or things, or if there are any herbs that you have in the environment that you'd like to add, or any vegetables, ching! You can actually take those vegetables and add them into the bread. Just be sure that you don't add too much moisture. So I'm going to add about 300 mils of beer, and then this is my little packet. So really simple. All you need is just a bowl in which to mix it. It doesn't even have to be a round bowl. This is just a Tupperware bowl that I'm going to use. I'm going to pour my dry ingredients in. I'm going to pour my wet ingredients in. Mix it together. Don't mix it too much because that dries your bread out. And this is a really nice campfire bread recipe that you can use either on holiday, practice it while you're on holiday before you need it in a bug out situation, and then you can improvise with whatever you've got on hand if you are in a bug out situation. The reason I'm not going to mix it straight in the bowl, question Sean just asked, is because the dough smears on the side and you're going to get a whole lot of burnt stuff sitting on the top where you try to mix the dough. So rather mix the dough in a separate bowl and then just put the dough or whatever mixture you've made in your container that you're going to put on the fire. You can add some creamed corn. Just check that you have more or less the same amounts of liquid as I'm adding in, and more or less the same amounts of solids or of dry ingredients, and then see how your consistency comes out. So I've made just a little dent, not completely, but just a little space for the liquid to run into, otherwise it goes and sits on the side. I'm going to pour approximate measures because this is an easy recipe to follow. We're not going to worry too much about that. And then I'm just going to stir. So I don't need to stir until every single lump is completely mixed in here. I really just want all of the dry ingredients and all of the wet ingredients to combine. The more I stir, the more dry my bread is going to be. And there's no kneading involved here. You don't have to let it raise or anything like that. You just mix the stuff together. Now I can just simply transfer it to my container. You can use a cast iron pot if you like. This is just an enamel pot. It just means that you've got to be that much more careful that you don't burn the bread. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't put butter at the bottom of this. You should put butter at the bottom of your pot, or something that keeps it from sticking. I wonder if I shouldn't just take this out. Yeah, I should. I made a boo-boo. So it turns out that was quite an easy fix. Just put a bit of butter in there. If you don't have butter, you can put lard or olive oil or canola oil or any kind of edible oil. That will just lubricate the bottom of your pot. Now we can go back transferring.
What about motor oil?
No, I said edible. Preferably use a pot that has a flat lid or some or the other space or area on it that you can pack coals onto. You kind of want to create an oven, so you need to distribute equal temperature throughout the dough, otherwise it's going to burn in one place and not be ready. So in my bug out vehicle I keep a couple pairs of leather gloves. These are really handy because you can move anything hot around without burning yourself, including pots, pans and stones, or even coals or embers on the fire. So I really find these to be really handy. Now I'm going to move this rock out here to make space for my pot. It is nice to keep something here that reflects the heat of the pot back, so you don't lose heat or too much heat out to the side. And then this is going to be way too hot and this is going to be way too cold. So what I can do is I can just turn the bread as it bakes. Remember, the ground gets really hot as well, so you don't need to put the bread on a grid. You will burn the bottom of the bread if you put the bread on a grid on top of the fire. And the pot just goes right there in the coals. So you can see I've stacked some coals around the side here, and then I'm going to just stack some embers on the sides and wherever I can manage to make them stay. You just make do with what you've got. There we go, my beer bread pot is stacked and ready to bake. I'm just going to rotate it every now and then in any case, because that side of the fire is much hotter than this side. And then in about 30 minutes from now we can check and we should have a perfectly baked bread. So like I said, common cattails can be used as a flour substitute. You basically just harvest the pollinous part, dry it out, break it apart. So you're basically using the pollen of the cattail as a flour substitute. And if you have a little bit of flour but it's not quite enough for you to bake bread or for whatever recipe you need it for, you can add some of those cattails or some of that pollen to your wheat flour as a substitute. Do try this before you actually need it. So use it at camp, do it at home, try it whenever you've got an opportunity to do so, so that you actually have an idea of how it behaves differently from wheat flour. Okay, the water's just here. I'm gonna see if I can find some cattails and then I can show you how to harvest the pollen. Come on, let's go look. Don't be afraid to trust your instincts in a bug out situation or when you're in the wilderness. God will provide everything that you need, but He's also given us the wisdom and the creativity to improvise for whatever we don't have. So all of this stuff, especially when it's dry like this, is really great as a flour substitute. Obviously, there are many things from the environment that you can use as substitutes for the ingredients that we usually use to bake bread. But this is a great way to make up some flour. This is the nice dry part here. And then just fluff it out with your fingers as you go. Okay. Any animal fat that you've got can be used as a substitute for oil. Eggs can be used as a substitute for a raising agent. So if you manage to forage some eggs from the environment, you can use those as well. So while I've been waiting for the bread to bake, I have gone and done the dishes in what I call my anything tub. So I carry, store and wash anything from the dog to the dishes in this tub, and it's really great because it's completely collapsible, so it's easy to store in your vehicle or wherever you've got space. It's also easy to pack when you go camping or to just keep in your car in case you need something to carry stuff like a grocery basket or something like that. But this tub has come in so handy because it has even been the bathtub in lieu of a shower. So really something nice to have and keep around. I also keep a biodegradable soap. So biodegradable is great because you know that you're not going to affect the environment using this soap. And God has commissioned us to take care of the planet and to take care of nature. So much better if you can use a soap such as this one that doesn't damage the environment. So with everything clean now, I think we can have a look at our bread to see whether it has baked yet. So I've turned and added some coals and turned it again a couple of times, and we should have a completely baked bread. Remember to remove all of the ashes from the top of your lid. Oh, smoke. Before you try and open the lid, because if you open the lid and ash lands up falling inside, you might have an ash flavored bread. Okay, it's going to come off. The moment of truth. And it is burnt. Let's test the inside. Well, there's one for camp failures.
Pro tip, check the bread while cooking.
No, you shouldn't check the bread because then it releases the heat. Gosh.
A Kinder Surprise.
It's actually very moist on the inside. It's almost
Doggy, want breadcrumbs for dinner?
almost not done on the inside actually. I think there was just too much heat. I suppose I could actually just redo it. As far as bonding agents go, I'm going to add one last ingredient to this, just a few drops of oil, about a tablespoon to be exact. And that's just going to keep it from burning, maybe a little bit more, as well as help all the ingredients to bond together nicely. Okay. And then just give it a good stir. So I've taken the bread off the fire and I've stacked some coals on top of it, but have removed it from the heat coming from the bottom. I was a bit concerned that there was too much heat coming from the ground, so I lifted it up. And you're just going to have to make that call based on how hot your fire is. So remember, low and slow does the trick. And now I can just slowly release it. And to check that it's completely done, I just stab it with a fork. And if the fork comes out clean and there's no dough on it, then it's completely done. Right, so this is going to the table now. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for joining us at camp. I hope you'll leave a comment and let me know if you've enjoyed this recipe. Until the next time, live ready. This is why I don't have a camera crew. What? I would never get anything done. I'm going to tell all these people the things that you say. Right, on that note, certainly don't need a glove and tongs for this, but a peanut gallery. As long as you understand the principles behind getting that bread to cook.